My name is Steve Barrett. I am the Global Director of Programming and Education for a company called Matrix Fitness. And we make commercial fitness equipment, the type of stuff you find in gymnasiums around the world. So I'm 55 years old now, or near enough. And that means I went to school almost 40 years ago. Back then, we didn't have all the labels that people have these days. So people didn't know they were dyslexic, for example. People didn't know they had other conditions. Therefore, going through the traditional school pathway where you learn, get tested, was very challenging for me. I had a school teacher write on my school report, "Barrett is led astray by mindless thugs and will amount to nothing in this world." Can you imagine that happening today? So at a school age, because I couldn't traditionally perform in exams, I was effectively written off. Madison, my daughter, was tested and confirmed to be dyslexic. It was really clear that I have pretty much every single characteristic that mechanism flags up to say that someone has dyslexia. My first recollection of it being a challenge with literacy, reading, spelling, etc. would have been at primary school. I can remember to this day, I sat in class and I tried for ages and ages to work out how to spell the word you. And I eventually went up to the teacher, and I can see her face as clear as day right now. She was called Miss Bean. And I asked her, "Miss, how do you spell you?" And she looked at me and said, "Don't be ridiculous. Don't be stupid. Sit down, work it out." And that's my first recollection of struggling with literacy. I don't think it's held me back. The reality is I've worked for a couple of international billion-dollar companies, and sometimes you have to do exams. And I've always been very, very good at the practical side of things, and I can take information, I can stand on a stage, I can present it so that people understand it. But actually getting to that position sometimes means taking exams, and I'm really not great at written exams to this day. But I wouldn't say it's actually held me back, it's just been a challenge. In reality, I don't know the difference of having dyslexia and not having dyslexia. I do genuinely believe that people with dyslexia think creatively in a different way from people that don't have it. So it's difficult to say, but I would say that I have worked and interacted with many, many incredibly successful people over the years. I have two in my mind right now, a guy who was a designer, internationally famous, renowned designer, incredibly successful, couldn't write a paragraph on a page. I know a guy who was the chairman of an international bank responsible for billions and billions of dollars of investment, incredibly dyslexic. To read his signature on a check, you wouldn't be able to decipher what it said. So I do know that people with dyslexia move in the very, very highest levels of occupation around the world. Now, when I was young, I used to race a lot, but when I get a little bit older, you start losing, it's not so much fun. Physically, I do have a little ambition that's just fizzing away in the back of my mind. Next year, I become 55, and that makes me a veteran athlete in track and field. Next year, when I become a veteran, maybe I'll dust off my running spikes and go and try and win some races. Exercise and cold water therapy are the two things which I go to pretty much on a 7 days a week basis to help me keep my mental health as good as it can be. Ice baths and swimming in open water certainly improves my mental well-being. I'm a member of a private lake swimming club, but my favorite thing is to go into the sea. When you're in the sea and you have the movement of the waves and the salt water and the temperature, it's absolutely incredible. My books are about fitness. I've written 6. English, they're in Spanish, they're in Italian, they're in French, and one of them has recently been translated into Mandarin. My tips on writing a book is, if you ever get the opportunity, just say yes and then work the details out later. If somebody actually asks you to do it, they've already kind of made up that you could probably do this.